Julie, and this is the Curated Curvy, where I bring you along for the journey as I attempt to create the curated wardrobe of my dreams with these two hands. And today I have for you all a pattern review. So the pattern that we are going to be reviewing today is the Ophelia dress, which was released by Elisa of Thrills and Stitches. I will link that down in the description box for you to go ahead and check out and grab this pattern, because I guarantee you when we are done, you're gonna have all the fills. Anyway, a few weeks ago, Elisa did reach out to me and she asked if I would be willing to review the dress in exchange for a gifted pattern. And I was like, of course, why not? I mean, I love her work. So when I reviewed this pattern, because I was reviewing it for her, someone whose work I so respect and revere, I reviewed it. I have made 3 different versions of this dress. I have hacked it, I have tested it, I've taken this pattern to about its limits with me personally, and so we're going to talk about those things today. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, the way that I'm going to do this, because I have changed the dress so much in each version, is first I'm going to give you the cut and dry review, and then I'm going to show you all the different versions of the dress that I was able to create. So take 2. Without further ado, let's get into it. Once again, the name of this dress is the Ophelia dress. It was created by Elisa of Thrills and Stitches, and the pattern is available for purchase on Etsy. The size range goes from a size extra small to a 3XL. The bust for an extra small is a 32, and the bust for a 3XL is a 44. The hips for an extra small range from 38 to a hip of 51 inches. For this pattern, I sewed size 3XL, which is a bust of 44, a waist of 37, and a hip of 51. My personal measurements are a bust of 44, a waist of 37, and a hip of 47. What adjustments did I have to make? So in adjusting this pattern, one of the things that I needed to adjust personally was the waistband bit. So the way that this pattern is constructed is you have like your upper bust piece of your bottom, and then you have like a nice band on the waist that gives you a lot of really good shaping through here. My waist sits relatively high. Because of this, I did have to go ahead and take an inch off of both the waistband and the bottom skirt piece. So just remember, whatever you do to the front, you do to the back. Whatever you do to the top, if they connect, you do to the bottom. For fabrics, the fabrics that I used for this were 3 different types. So I have this version, which is in a cotton poly blend. I believe it's 50% cotton, 50% polyester. I have also made a version in linen, and I have also made a version in 100% like really kind of stiff, crinkly polyester. The construction process for this dress is twofold. Because it is a PDF pattern, the first thing that you need to do is go ahead and print your pattern, tile your pieces together, and then you need to go ahead and cut them out. This pattern also does not include seam allowance on the PDF version, so I would suggest that before you cut your pattern pieces out, while you have it giant and tiled together, you go ahead and you add your seam allowance. Per the pattern instructions, you should add 3/8 of an inch for seam allowance, but I prefer to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and since I had the liberty to add that on my own, I went ahead and added a 1/2 inch seam allowance to all of the seams, and it worked out just fine. Now for the actual construction process of the pattern, I would say that it is relatively simple, almost deceptively simple. So in my opinion, the dress has like a really nice shaping effect, which I feel like would be a little more complicated to achieve, but the pattern cutting and drafting was done so well that it comes together so easily. It's like magic. Like once you zip it up and it like snatches you in all the right places, you're just like, I get all of this and I didn't even have to work that hard for it. In terms of the instructions, she does have video instructions to support the pattern construction. I am blanking right now on whether or not she has written instructions, because I am a visual learner, so I usually always will look at the video instructions if they are available. But because she has video instructions to walk you through every step of the process, it really made the construction relatively simple. There's not a lot of guesswork. You see her do it, you do it yourself, and as long as you follow those instructions, it's really hard to go wrong. One of the things that I did change in the construction process was omitting the lining. I don't really like lining things if I don't have to, especially when it consists of multiple pieces, because you're essentially making the same garment twice, and I am an instant gratification girly, unfortunately, and so that just delays my gratification, and we're not interested. So what I did was I finished all of the necklines with a piece of bias tape, and it came out beautifully. Do I like the pattern's fit? So I think that this dress fits me phenomenally. Phenomenally? That's not a word. I think that this dress fits me beautifully, if I must say so myself. I feel like it brings me in all the right places. It has a nice flare out on the skirt. The length is really nice. Everything about this dress I feel like is so feminine and so sensual at the same time. It is definitely going to be a staple in my wardrobe. Definitely. And jumping back to the construction process and alterations, one thing that I did forget to mention was that I did also have to lengthen the bust, which again I feel like is pretty par for the course for me. These boobies have nursed 2 children to life, and so they don't sit like they sat 10 years ago. Anyways, I say this to say that my bust apex usually sits a little bit lower than most patterns allow for. So all I did was put some cutting lines through the pattern, and then I extended that piece and I added a piece in between. Actually, I can show you what that looks like. So this is the bust pattern. Forgive my, like, I've used this pattern a lot. So if it looks like it's been through it, it's because it has. Also, my son came in here with a pair of scissors while I was in the shower one day and decided to just go to hacking the pattern. So I've had to like tape random pieces of paper and redraw the shapes that he just decided to cut off on a whim. So good times. Anyways, I went ahead and I sliced through here. I added 1 inch of width, and then I just redrew that line and taped the bottom back on. So that was the other alteration that I did need to make. Just joking, there's one more. I also did change the skirt from a A-line skirt to a 3-panel skirt, and I did that simply by cutting out the dart triangle and then taking that line all the way down to the hem of the skirt, so that I now have panels like seams here and then a centerpiece in the middle. I did this because I have a pretty wide hip range, and I find that if I don't have like a vent in my fabric, then as I'm walking, the fabric tends to ride up. And so while it is like a really nice thing to do style wise, it's also like out of necessity for me and my body shape. And for whatever reason, I can't find those pattern pieces to show you, so my bad. Will you make the pattern again? I did make the pattern again. I made the pattern 3 times over, so obviously I really like it and I really enjoy putting it together. It's also, now let's get into these hacks. All right, so the first version that I am wearing right now, I'm gonna move you back. I'm not wearing shoes, so don't judge me. You don't need to see that mirror, because then you're gonna see what my sewing room actually looks like right now, and then you are gonna judge me. So what I am wearing here is actually my 3rd iteration of the dress, and this is actually a button front dress. So in order to get the button placket down the center front, all I did was when I laid the fabric onto my pattern, you don't do that. Was when I laid the pattern piece onto my fabric, I left room for an extra 2 inches. That 2 inches was then folded over and it was just sewn down, and that created my button placket. I also like put a piece of 1 inch interfacing going down the entire center to really support those buttons and the holes that I would put in it through making buttonholes. For this version, I also added pockets to the dress. So the dress does not come with pockets, and you're gonna be surprised when you hear me say this, but I think that's the right decision. The way that the skirt is cut, it's supposed to kind of go out on your hips to give you that nice like hourglass frame, and the pockets really do get in the way with that. So I did kind of grapple with taking the pockets off or leaving them on. I had to do a lot of steaming and pressing in order to like reshape the hips, because the pockets did misshape them a little bit. So it's one of those things that I feel like if you're gonna wear this dress, just find a cute little matching handbag and leave the pockets out, even though they don't come with pockets to begin with. Now, this was my first version of the dress, and this is the dress sewn per the instructions, with the exception of the 2 vents in the skirt. With this dress, one of the big changes that I made, as you can see here, is that I just used a piece of bias binding to finish off the neckline, as opposed to drafting a facing for it or lining it. Didn't want to do either one of those steps, and this trick usually works perfectly fine for me. If you are going to finish your neckline with bias binding, one of the things that I suggest strongly is that you understitch. A lot of times people will say that if they finish their neck with a contrasting binding, then they're worried about that color popping up and them seeing it. But if you understitch, you won't have that problem, because that stitch, what it's going to do is just slightly roll your main fabric back so it tucks under, and that fabric is first, and then the lining or the bias tape sits under that, if that makes sense. Okay, there you see it. So you see that first you see the main fabric, and then underneath that you see the bias tape, and that is because I understitched. So it's pulling my main fabric forward, and then the bias tape sits neatly under that. This is actually finished with a blue, like a baby blue bias binding, which again you cannot see at all from the outside. So that's just a tip if you're gonna finish your neckline with bias binding. Anyways, this was the first version of the dress. This is absolutely gorgeous. This is in like a textured polyester blend that I picked up while I was on vacation. And this is sewn exactly per the envelope instructions, with the exception of the slight changing of the skirt. So it's the same skirt. All I did was I added a seam here, just again to give me that vent when I'm walking. The last version I have to show you is the Ophelia as a top. And not just a top with a little tie back situation. So the back is completely open and then it's closed using these ties. Now, because I did this hack, it doesn't give me the shaping, but I like that it's just kind of like this loose, like very relaxed, hangs away from the body top, especially for like your warmer weather days. So with this one, I also did do some slight tweaking. I don't know if the camera will pick up on the waistband piece. So here I gave it a pretty defined peak, going up in between the bust and then coming back down, as opposed to like the soft curve that the original pattern has. And the way that I did that, is my hair sticking up? Would y'all tell me if my hair was sticking up? Because if you wouldn't, that's messed up. Just saying. All right, and the way that I did that was all I did was I should show you this on the flat, but I'm like low-key too lazy to move my camera. So this is the two pieces held together. As you can see, this piece here, I just drew a curve and I cut it off and then I taped it to the bottom piece. So it's literally the same pieces of the pattern, just kind of like reconfigured to give it more of a peak, as opposed to like, again, that soft curve that the pattern originally called for. Another thing that I changed with the top version is the sleeves are brought together using ties, so there's no elastic. I just created a channel through here and then each sleeve has a tie to bring it in. Again, it's a tie front back. And then this one is not even finished with fabric cut on the bias, maybe because it's linen and it's just a lot looser woven. I was just able to cut out about a 1 1/4 inch strip, fold it as you would fold bias, and then stitch it down. And then the button placket is also stitched down or supported using a separate piece of fabric. And so all in all, I have, as you can see, 3 very different versions of the Ophelia dress. And I did this because, again, when I was asked to review the pattern, I didn't just want to sew it and be like, oh, it's great, but really test the limits and be able to honestly tell you whether or not this was something that you should consider having in your stash. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I believe that it is. I think that it is the perfect spring summer top. I have worn this one out like on dates with the hubby. I've worn this one when I'm just out and about with the kiddos. I've yet to break this bad boy out yet, but believe you me, she's going to make her debut very soon. I think that what you can do with the pattern with a little bit of imagination is quite interesting and really extends the life of the pattern. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is pattern hacking. I don't want to ever just purchase a pattern just for that one view and that be it. And the Ophelia dress is a great dress, kind of like a canvas dress, where if you can imagine it, you can probably create something very different. One of the things, or one of the views that come with the dress, is a long circle skirt, which I didn't sew in any of my versions just because of where I live and the weather climate. We ain't got time for that. It's just too hot for a long skirt. So all of them, or both of the dresses, are short dresses. And then I have a cute little crop top. But yeah, I think this pattern is definitely worth it and one that you should consider having in your stash. Again, I will have the pattern linked in the description box below. I will also have Elisa's YouTube channel linked in the description box below. Please go purchase the pattern, check out her channel, subscribe. She is an amazing creator on YouTube. She's so creative, her ideas are so beautiful, and her style point of view, it gives high fashion. It gives like accessible high fashion. And so I feel like it's worth a look. Anyways, until next time, stay beautiful, make great things. I'll talk to you later. Bye.